Welcome to the NC Spin After Spin. Additional comments from our panelists just available on our website. John Hood, what do you wish you had said on last week's show, but you didn't?
We talked briefly at the beginning of the show about the 3rd and 9th District special elections, and I just wanted to underline a couple of additional points there. We didn't talk much about the 3rd because no one expected anything to happen other than Greg Murphy to win. But he won big. In fact, he overperformed Trump and Romney and other Republicans in those counties in the 3rd District versus their previous elections. And I think that further illustrates, since that is mostly a rural district, that further illustrates this sort of creeping realignment we've been seeing, somewhat before Trump, but certainly after Trump, of rural voters becoming, who previously might have voted Republican in some areas, but Democrat in some, for like legislative seats. That's been changing, and these become more reliably Republican areas, while at the same time, suburbs, the strongest place for Republicans, until recently, was not in the rural areas, and it certainly wasn't in the urban cores. It was in the suburban parts of Wake and Mecklenburg and the suburban counties surrounding places like that, and they have become more competitive. I think that is a Trump phenomenon. I think the rural phenomenon has multiple pieces, including in the Robeson County case. This really does appear, if you look at it precinct by precinct, the Lumbee Indian vote has become more Republican.
Right.
It really has become
and Dan Bishop played to that vote.
He did,
yeah.
and some of that is cultural.
But so in many of these
what I mean
rural
by that
areas,
is some of these minority voters are more socially conservative than the Democratic
Right.
Party for which they used to vote.
in many of these rural areas, they're losing population.
They are.
Which means that when we go through the redistricting in
There will
2021
be
or whenever it
fewer-
is,
There will be fewer representatives and senators from rural areas, more from suburban and urban areas, yes.
so is this going to ultimately flip the state so far as,
Well, it will
would have,
affect the legislative seats, assuming that the maps are drawn reasonably. You would expect this trend over time to be problematic for the Republicans, though not entirely so. Again, the county line rule, the compactness rules, the keeping municipal boundaries in line rules, all of these things interrupt some of these because we don't have a parliament where people are elected proportionally. But for the Republicans, for things like statewide elections, presidential elections that are done state by state, they simply have to regain their competitive footing in the suburbs. They can't replace the voters they're losing in the suburbs with voters in the rural areas because it's not a one-for-one replacement. So that when Rob made this point during the show, he's absolutely right. Republicans have to regain their competitive footing in the suburbs in order to win statewide elections.
that plus the fact that I think, and this is a future topic for a future show, Republicans are going to have to figure out how to appeal to minorities.
Well, what I'm getting at is to some extent that is happening in rural areas. What they've got to do, though, is they've got to regain the loyalty of some of the voters in the suburbs that they have used to rely on that are not as reliable anymore.
Interesting. Well, thanks for watching the After Spin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.